Hello, hello, and welcome to the Canadian Football Countdown. I'm Ryan Coop here alongside Trey Colbeck, Adam Stewart. Welcome one and all to our live Week 8 CFL preview show here. Tonight, we've got an exciting announcement to kick things off. We'll go through some of the major storylines for each upcoming game, discuss the best fantasy options available, and we'll make our picks against the spread here tonight as well. We'll also take your comments. We'll take your questions in the chat throughout the night as well. We are live, all made possible by our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more at facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. Hello to everybody joining us live, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook, the Game Time TV YouTube page. Hello to everybody listening after the fact as well. Before I bring in the rest of our panel here tonight, I do want to mention we are a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network. And as always, want to acknowledge that the Canadian Football Countdown is brought to you from Treaty 1 territory, traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation, as well as from Treaty 4 territory, traditional territory of the Cree, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, and Métis Nation. Now let's bring in the rest of the panel here this evening. First, in the middle of the screen, it's great Trey Colbeck. Trey, how you doing tonight?
Fantastic, boys. Ready to talk some football. Let's get at it.
Awesome. And joining us here as well, the great Adam Stewart. Adam, how are you tonight?
Doing real well, Ryan. Ready to get on with some football tonight.
Yes, lots of fun stuff to talk about tonight. Always look forward to previewing another week in the CFL with you guys. Cannot believe we are here at week number 8 of the season already. Seems things are flying by. We're going to get into talking about all of these things shortly, but first, we teased it all week on social media and everything. Very exciting announcement. We have a new sponsor here on the Canadian Football Countdown. We here on the podcast are proud to enter a paid partnership with Betstamp for the remainder of the 2022 CFL season. Betstamp's a free app that helps you find the best value in regards to online sports betting. There are so many different sports books out there these days. Each one offers you different prices on the same games. Whether you're fresh into the world of sports betting like myself, or you're a resident expert like Trey, Betstamp makes it real easy for you to maximize the return on your picks. You simply pull up the game on the app, see the odds offered by each of the different sportsbook affiliates, all in one convenient place. Find some odds you like. You can sign up straight for the corresponding site through the Betstamp Bet link page. See all the affiliates, see all the prices there. And if you even want some extra insight before you place your wagers and want to see what others are picking, you can check out the commission-free Betstamp Marketplace, where you can see the bets that others have placed. And through their verified bet tracking, you get the guarantee that the odds others have picked based on are verified and legitimate. So all of us here, I think, are very excited for this partnership because, well, one, not only does it benefit us here and helps grow the show, but it benefits you, the listeners, as well. First off, starting today, you'll notice a revamped betting segment on our weekly preview show. So later on in the show, instead of whereas up until now, we've been kind of using the same site's odds every time, we're going to use Betstamp to align our picks with betting lines that will help you maximize your value a little bit. So you can look forward to that. You can also follow the Canadian Football Countdown directly on the marketplace there. You can track our picks, track our success throughout the season. We've been on a bit of a tear lately, so you're going to want to follow along. And you can take that into account when you make your picks as well. And finally, last of all the money we're making from this partnership, we're investing right back into the podcast itself to continue to grow the show and continue to bring a better experience for you, the viewer, or you, the listener. So very excited about all of that. And you can visit betstamp.app or download the free app from the App Store. Sign up with referral code CFC for Canadian Football Countdown to start using Betstamp free today. Best of luck with your wagers. And remember, always bet responsibly. Boys, what do you think? Very excited here for a revamped betting segment. I know we've been on a good roll here lately, and I think we could turn this into maybe making some money here for ourselves and the listeners.
Yeah, I guess as the betting resident or expert resident, it's great. Again, always play responsible. Don't I have a job where I pretty much am paid to gamble all day. So, don't always take what I say into account. I work in horse racing. So if I don't bet, I might lose my job. So don't always take what I say 100% to heart. But other than that, always have fun. Like I was just at the Downs today, and I'm really excited to talk some football gambling with you guys as well. Adam, what do you think?
I'm just real excited for what this is going to mean for the podcast. I mean, we're going to have a better podcast. We're going to have better experiences. Let's face it. It's cool that you get to see other sites and see where you can get your best odds from. So kudos to a page like Betstamp like this that has everything all in one spot that's real easy to use. That's really going to help a guy like me that, is factor all day and bored. So, looking up bets is probably a thing I might start doing. And it's all on one page, so I don't have to go messing around, looking around everywhere else. But like Trey said, don't bet the farm. Seriously, don't bet the farm. But hey, gamble responsibly, have some fun with it. And that's what we're all here for, right? Have a little bit of fun.
Exactly. And you'll get to see a little bit of what the app looks like later on in the show if you're watching the video feed, where we will go through kind of some of the odds, some of the lines for each of the games for week number 8. Before we get into the storylines for each of those games, I think, Trey, you had a story you wanted to bring up here, not directly tied to a game this week.
Yeah, so I don't know if everyone has seen it, but contributor of Bonfire Sports TV, Zach Schnitzer, and a friend of ours who plays in our fantasy football podcast league, came up with an article today, Coming Back Stronger, how the Blue Bombers helped me recover from mental illness. First of all, I just want to give a big shout out to him. That is, a tough thing to do. I don't know if he's going to see this. I don't know if he watches our show regularly, but if he does, I really appreciate that. And, if you guys give me a couple minutes just to kind of go off of it, I kind of went through a similar thing in 2019. I was going through a preamp to a divorce, and I spent some time in a hospital because of attempted suicide in 2019. And I've never been medically diagnosed, but a therapist strongly suggests I have borderline personality disorder, which causes mood swings, depression, anxiety, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I feel like it's kind of my response, not responsibility, but seeing a guy like Zach do a stand-up thing, he made me feel better about myself, thinking, the Bombers kind of saved my life too in 2019. I kind of felt silly about that, but then seeing a guy like Zach come out and say that gives you a little reassurance, and he made me feel better, and I'm sure he made a lot of other people feel better. So I hope I can make at least one person that watches our show feel better today. And I don't know if anyone saw this, but Paddy the Batty UFC fighter from UK, he had an emotional story too about that. He said, I'd rather have a mate cry on my shoulder than me attend his funeral next week. So, always reach out, and mental health and men's mental health, we really got to keep the conversation going. It's more than just a one-day talk in January when it's hashtag Bell Let's Talk Day, right? We can talk every day about it. And that's all I wanted to say, guys. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, I think that's a great message, Trey, and thank you for opening up, and thank you for sharing that, and thanks to Zach for sharing that in the article as well. I'll link the article in the live chats here for those watching the videos, assuming I did that properly. And very happy to have you here today, Trey. Happy to get to know you, and happy to have you here as a part of the podcast. And I think I speak for everybody when I say thanks for sharing that message and for being you, Adam.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's face it. It takes a lot to get onto a microphone every day and just talk like we do here. But talking about a thing like mental health is a very, very, very tough thing to do for any person. It takes a very, very strong man to do such a thing. And Trey, yeah, no, I 100% support you in any way on this. And same thing with you, Zach. I know if you're listening, it's always good to talk, and that's the main thing. Talk if you feel bad or feel something's wrong. Talk to the right people. Talk to your friends. Don't think you're alone. You never are.
Yeah, couldn't have said any of that better myself. Wholeheartedly agree. As somebody who's struggled with stress, anxiety, a ton of that stuff myself. Everybody's going through their own battles. Everybody's fighting something. Let's all fight it together and continue to support one another. And football itself can be a great breakaway, as we've talked about, from, all the daily struggles of life. And it's a lot of fun. I know personally for me to come here and talk football 2 nights a week with all of y'all, and Michael, of course, as well. and everybody watching and listening. And it's just great to chat about this game that brings so much joy into our lives. Sometimes frustrations, but a lot of joy as well. So let's get into talking about the week 8 games here. Adam, what do we got for the first game of the week?
So our first game of the week is heading out to the Steel City. Hamilton will be hosting the Montreal Alouettes tomorrow night, 5:30 Central, 4:30 Eastern. That game there, I believe that this is the first game back for former head coach Kahari Jones facing his old team. I think that's probably the biggest storyline going into this one here, just because we don't know exactly how much of the playbook has changed over for Montreal when it went to Danny Machocha. What are some things that you think Hamilton are going to exploit because Kahari Jones is there? Rob, you can go first.
Sorry, you cut out there for a second. That was me first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You know, he's got a lot of inside knowledge. I can tell you Montreal hasn't wholeheartedly changed the playbook and the schemes in the 2 weeks since Kahari Jones left. So it'll be interesting to see how much how much knowledge he brings and how much of the stamp he's placing on the new look offense, so to say, for the Ticats in his consultant role that Montreal's going to pick up on here. But I think there is room to exploit a few things against the Alouettes defense here. I think it's a very beatable team. You know, the Ticats, the Alouettes, they're two teams that are struggling in the East Division race, as most teams are. So I think there are a lot of things that they can exploit here. I don't think Montreal's defense is quite that deep. I would put them maybe lower down on the league in depth. So Kahari's had the inside look at all of that, and there's a great opportunity for him to design plays that hopefully, bring the best out of Dane Evans and bring the best out of that run game for Hamilton that I think is going to relieve a lot of the pressure on Dane Evans. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. I mean, that's what I look for from Hamilton every week is, run the ball, use a guy like Don Jackson. But Trey, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm hoping Kahari can help with Hamilton getting more points on the board. Just looking really quickly, they have the second least points forwarded, and the only team that has less is Toronto, who's played a less game. And there's also teams like Calgary and BC who have played less games and have way more points. Like, they need to start scoring points. And, Kahari, I'm hoping, like I said I think on Monday or last week, Kahari better be whispering, run the ball, and get that yard game going. And then that's going to open up things and down the field. And I believe I saw, was Vernon Adams added to the 1-game injured list again. So this is going to be Harris's team for the foreseeable future. I don't know if Kahari is going to help on the defensive end, but you got to get to him too on that side of the ball. You got to get in his face. You got to slow him down in any run game they have. So it's crazy that, this is the battle for second place right now, a 2-4 Montreal versus 1-5 Hamilton. And, I guess nothing's a gimme, but Toronto plays the winless Ottawa. So you would assume Toronto should win that one. So yeah, this is a battle for second, and two teams in the East might be all that we see in the playoffs this year, right? So this is a big early season matchup. But yeah, I think Kahari is going to have to give all the secrets, but I don't know. Who knows how much is still there? I guess it takes time for everything to change, but I guess we'll find out tomorrow night, right?
I wonder if Kahari doesn't also just go and try to go and get Alouettes off their game by hitting certain guys, or just kind of, poking. The word would be poke the bear. Go and try to get some penalties drawn from Montreal. Team, just like the Saskatchewan Roughriders. So to me, if Kahari wants to go and expose something and wants to prove a point, he would go and say, well, I got fired for that, so maybe there's something still there. So that's what I'm really looking for out of Kahari Jones tomorrow night here over in Hamilton. You alluded to it earlier there, Trey. Vernon Adams is on the 1-game injured list. How much of that is really him actually injured? And how much of it is we're starting to maybe sit him because we know we're going to trade him soon? Trey?
Yeah, it's probably that. And if you're on the injured list as your salary count, like I'm not sure what the CFL rules are. I know some leagues it doesn't, and some leagues it does. I know his salary is probably not huge, but it's probably a couple $100,000 that they could use elsewhere if he's on the injured list, right? So probably trying the whole take him out in the second inning because there's a good chance he's going to get traded before the game's over kind of mentality there. You know, we saw a checklist with a certain team out west that has his name on it. I'm sure there's other teams that definitely want him potentially, but, you know, who knows? You know, we've seen that you kind of need that 1A, 1B quarterback at times in the CFL, or definitely have a strong backup. So we kind of all shook our heads when we saw Edmonton make the weird trade to get rid of Arbuckle, because we kind of thought, well, he's at least a solid guy to have as a backup, you would think, especially with the injuries they're having. But you never know what guys like Chris Jones and some of the other GMs and head coaches want, Ryan?
Yeah, and I feel like I wonder if part of this is that, you know, they've got a solid third stringer too in Dominic Davis, right? Who is arguably the leading offensive player for the Alouettes in the last number of weeks. What does he have? 5 rushing touchdowns. I know he put up a big total in CFL Fantasy last week. But yeah, it is interesting because I don't think he was overly injured. I mean, he was the backup the past couple of weeks. Vernon Adams Jr. was. This week he was limited in practice. You know, if a guy's being put on the 1-game injured list, you kind of wonder why wasn't he the past couple of weeks? Like, what has changed then? I could see what you're saying, that, you know, maybe we're leaning towards a trade. Yeah, at Edmonton, you know, maybe some thoughts that he could go there, rumors there. Now, obviously, the issues in Saskatchewan kind of escalating with, Jake Dolegala had to start last week, and Fajardo, at least one of his legs might start this week. We'll see on that. But, you know, I think there are possibilities out there for Montreal to potentially entertain a trade here if they're not going to put him in as a starter.
No, I agree. I think that Vernon Adams, I don't know if there's something going on here, but it doesn't seem like GM/Coach Machocha just wants to run him at all. It doesn't seem like he's interested in him. He doesn't seem like he wants anything on this. Yeah, okay, Trey. Anyway, nevertheless, like I said, it doesn't seem like Vernon Adams is a fit right now in Montreal. And it's unfortunate because I think the guy's a good quarterback. And to me, you're still one hit away from Dominic Davis being your starting quarterback in Montreal. So I hope they're doing something else. One last quick little thing, guys. Keys to the game. One little quick thing that might change the game for one team or the other. Trey?
Running the ball. You know, these are two teams that don't do it very often. And especially Hamilton. I think Hamilton, you know, when you think of Hamilton, you know, they kind of give me Pittsburgh vibes, strong defense and that rough and tough offense, but you got to run the ball to have that. You got to own the offensive line and defensive line, and they're not owning it right now. And for Montreal, I guess you just got to keep hoping Harris nickels and dimes his way down the field and puts up some points, right? That's kind of what the game's going to be tomorrow, Ryan.
Yeah, for me, for Montreal, it's consistency at wide receiver. Where's Jake Winnipeg been? He had his best output of the season last game, but it still was not what we're used to seeing from him. And Hergy Mayala stepped up with a big game last week. But, you know, the past 2 seasons, he's been a sparingly good game, but a lot of games a bit underwhelming there as well. So I want to see a consistency across the board production-wise for Montreal. When it comes to Hamilton, I'm interested to see how they perform. No Simone Lawrence. I believe he's out on defense. But on offense, the guy I'm most excited to see is Lamar Durant, I think, making his debut here for the Ticats, coming back from injury this week. We got to check the depth charts, of course, yet still, but I'm excited to see what he does for that offense and see if Dane Evans can find a connection with him to get that offensive output.
And I think the key for me would be that Hamilton's getting a big piece back for their offense this week. Lamar Durant looks like he is ready to go for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. So if he's ready, that means that you can bring another American in. That means Don Jackson can actually play properly and not have to worry about substitutions all the time to get him in. So for me, that's a big piece for Hamilton. And this might be last week might have been the start of the turnaround for the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Yes, provided they didn't win last week against the BC Lions. But they played competitive, and they kept a very good BC Lions offense kind of on their heels. With that being said, I guess we'll move on to game number 2 of the week here, which is on Friday night for Friday Night Football. Going to the heartland of the Saskatchewan. It's the BC Lions and the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Of course, the Roughriders still have a pile of players on the injured list, including now Logan Bandy is out for this week with illness, which I presume would be COVID again. What do you guys think right now if the Riders have to make another change in center for the offensive line? Is this just a disaster and waiting for the Roughriders? Or what do you think there, Ryan?
I'm not starting Cody Fajardo this week if that's happening. The guy can barely move as it is. He's clearly injured. He clearly needs some time to heal. I believe, are the Riders on a bye week after this week? I could be wrong on that one. I think they are. So, it's a big matchup with a division rival in the BC Lions, but you're going to have so many division matchups down the stretch that, especially if the O-line is pretty beat up, the team's still probably recovering a little bit from the COVID spree that hit them this last week. I'm looking for the Riders to hopefully get a lot out of, the next man up mentality. We saw a couple at wide receiver. What was it? Tevin Jones had a big week last week for them at wide receiver, got into more of a role with some of the other pieces out. So I'm looking at more of the same for the Riders. I think you go with Jake Dolagala again at quarterback. You let Fajardo rest for the next 2 weeks, and you see who's going to step up in this game.
I think you do everything to make sure Fajardo's good to go by Labor Day, right? Like you don't, that's when the season starts, right? And as long as you can float, keep your head above water and kind of stay around 500, you're going to be in that crossover spot, right? So you don't need to risk anything right now. I don't think if you're Saskatchewan, I don't know what's worse. The Riders go 0-3 over the next couple because they don't start Fajardo, or you put Fajardo in and he's a season-ending injury and they don't even make the playoffs anyway. Like you got to balance those options out, right? So yeah, I really don't know what to do in Riderville. I don't think running the ball is going to help them here with how their O-line looks right now either and everything. But, yeah, they got the bye, and then the week after they play a Saturday game in Edmonton. So hopefully that's kind of a bye part too. But Edmonton's eating up a little bit too. We don't know what they're going to do. They're on the bye this week. So, you don't know what they're going to do. So, I don't know. I feel bad for Saskatchewan. I'm trying not to just rain on Saskatchewan's parade. I really had high hopes for them this year, but they just seem to be that team that either COVID or injuries just keep plaguing them, right?
Yeah, no, I'm looking at it right now, and Cody Fajardo has a MCL tear or a ligament damage in the MCL. Now, when you hear that, first of all, why is he playing on it right now? First of all, and like I say just before this, Logan Bandy's out. That's your starting center, the guy that's going to be leading your offensive line to protect and save Cody Fajardo from further damage on that knee. And it would be insane right now for the Saskatchewan Roughriders to play him. This being said, you got to remember that this is a game that could be a 4-point game against a team that you could be chasing to get that 3rd spot or even that 4th spot. Let's face it, Edmonton's not that far out anymore to possibly do a crossover. So you got to win games. And one of those teams you got to win against, and they play them 3 times in the month of August, is the BC Lions. So you got to start off good and strong, I think. But again, does that mean you sacrifice your quarterback? I don't know. I don't want to be the guy to have to decide that. Luckily, I'm not. It's Craig Dickinson that has to decide that. So all good with me.
I hate to say it, but he's giving me – it's Andrew Luck, man. It's Andrew Luck with Fajardo, right? He's going to be done way before he should be. And I know we got to move on to the next team, but, Andrew Luck had another – he could have played for 10 more years. Quarterbacks go till 37, 38 in the NFL. Fajardo could go for a few more years. You tear that even more, he's done, man. So, I get he's a fighter. He probably wants to be in there, but you got to balance it, It's tough. I don't know. But, yeah, we'll go on to BC. It's just a tough one. I feel bad for the guy.
It's been this way now for a few years in Saskatchewan. They just don't have the offensive line to support a guy that can run the football like Cody Fajardo can. And it sucks. But that's kind of sometimes the cards you're dealt. It sucks. But, for Saskatchewan, hasn't looked great. It's not going to look great this week, even with a good BC Lions defense. But I want to spend a little bit more time on the quarterback side of things with the BC Lions. Nathan Rourke has not had really two great outings here. Had one against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, threw a couple picks, did get some touchdowns and tried to balance it out. Thought nothing of it really. It was Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Then had a bye and only had 17 points against the Hamilton Tiger Cats team, in which they should have really controlled pretty easily, you would think. As Chris said over on our side, is Nathan Rourke starting to run out of steam in BC, or is there something else going on? Trey, what do you think on that one?
I think the next 4 weeks for BC is going to be telling because it's Saskatchewan, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatchewan, right? So, yeah, Saskatchewan's got a lot of injuries, but you're still going into Mosaic. That could definitely, doesn't matter who's playing as your quarterback in Mosaic. You got the Pills country there screaming at you. He's a young quarterback. I think we've been talking about the game that he needs to prove himself. This might be another one here. You're going into enemy territory. Against the Bombers, that could have been a game, almost a trap game because he had it at home and, he let it slip out of his fingers a little bit. But this is a game where you got Saskatchewan, a lot of injuries, a little bit of morale issues maybe, with things going on in Saskatchewan. So this is a game that they either need to run up the score and really show what they've got, or if they don't, yeah, I agree with Chris. Maybe Nathan Rourke is running out of that steam a little bit. I do also like his other point. Russell Wilson and Andrew Luck drafted the same year, and guess who's playing? Well, Seattle had a decent old line when they were a good team, so hopefully Denver keeps them safe. But that's for another podcast. We'll do the NFL roundabout next time. But back to BC. Yeah, I think Nathan Rourke, we always talk about it. I feel like it's been like, does he need to prove himself this week? Does he need to prove himself this week? I saw an interesting thing. At this point of the season, who is your Western MOP? Would it be him? So would he also be the MOC? I guess both. And then look at the East. Who would your Eastern MOP and MOC be? I saw Andrew Harris. So I'm like, is it crazy that two Canadians are kind of the top picks right now for that? So I think he's got a lot of season left, but I want to see a little bit out of him. And I think against Riderville is the game he needs to do it. All right.
We're talking about a guy who's made, 7 starts in the CFL? Like, when we're talking about him running out of steam, I think he's just picking up steam. And I think maybe those first 2 games this season put some unrealistic expectations. Like, we had to know he was not going to put up 30 fantasy points a game every single game this season. And, you go back to you look at last week's numbers against Hamilton. Yeah, ugly win over the Ticats for the Lions. But 22 of 30, over 73% passing, 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. For a rookie quarterback making, or I guess technically he's not a rookie, he played last season, but for a guy making his 7th start in the CFL, those are pretty solid numbers. Do I like seeing the 2 interceptions? No. But, 2 touchdown passes, 250 yards, yeah, that's a pretty good day for you there too. The thing that has lacked a little bit in the last 2 weeks for Rourke and this Lions offense is him getting more involved in the run game, right? That was the big thing the first couple weeks. Big run totals, big rushing touchdowns from Nathan Rourke opened things up more. Well, just last game, 4 carries for 8 yards for him. So I think if they can get him using his legs a little bit more often here in this game against Saskatchewan, I think that's going to help big time. That's going to allow things to open up for James Butler, and that's going to open things up for the passing game a lot here as well for the Lions.
The one thing I'm looking on this one, though, is there might be something to this losing steam a little bit, but I think it's more of a inexperienced quarterback, right? The guy that just needs to learn, hey, this is when I need to make that throw instead of maybe forcing something, possibly giving up that interception. That being said, I am going to watch him a little bit closer this week because this is a ferocious Roughrider defense. I mean, let's face it, if Charleston Hughes essentially doesn't get called on a kicking play, they could have beat Toronto last week with pretty much a third-string offense, essentially. So I'm very interested to see what he does against a very, very solid Saskatchewan defense, including a resurgent Charleston Hughes, which I didn't think I would be saying earlier this season. Keys to the game in this one. Ryan, go ahead.
Remember, Mike called Charleston Hughes. Didn't he say he was going to be his West MOP nominee at the start of the season? So do I think Charleston Hughes is going to win MOP? No, but shout out to Mike for calling the resurgence of one Charleston Hughes.
Calling it right now, Charleston Hughes versus Mike, versus this might be the battle for the MOP spot this week, right? To Nathan Rourke versus Charleston Hughes. There we go. Keys to the game, though, Ryan. What things are you looking for in this matchup?
Well, I think I already mentioned for BC, it's get Nathan Rourke's running ability going. I think that opens things up a lot more. For Saskatchewan, I think it's keep leaning into the dual running back system you have going there, especially if either way, if Fajardo's in or if it's Dolagala or Mason Fine, if he's ready to go. That I think has proved well for them to get Hickson involved there a little bit. Also, big plays from your special teams are going to help. Shout out Mario Alford for that glorious touchdown return last week. Just do more of that. Their defense, I think, has done a pretty solid job this season. I've been very impressed by the Riders' defense. So, I'm looking at the offense here to do enough here. Much like that Winnipeg win over Edmonton kind of last week, right? I want to see that type of win here from the Riders. Defense makes the big plays. Offense does enough to get it done. Trey?
Except for one problem, Ryan, that you got. Frankie Hickson is listed as out for Friday night's game. So just keep that in mind. Trey, make sure you pick him up for fantasy.
Yeah, I'll make sure to put him right in that. But I basically agree with what Ryan said. The BC Lions, Nathan Rourke has to make sure this team isn't running out yet on him, and he's got to, run for those extra yards and, play like a young mobile quarterback. But Saskatchewan, just looking at some stats here, they have double the forced fumbles per game than BC. They also have 3.7 sacks per game, while BC only has 2.4. So they got to win the defensive battles, right? They got to win the turnover battle. They, like Ryan said, they got to basically play like how Winnipeg played against Edmonton last week. Get a big play on defense, maybe a pick six, maybe a fumble that Charleston Hughes doesn't kick to himself, right? Something like that, and that could be the ball game, or get a nice punt return or kick return or something like that. That's the CFL for you. You might need that, and your defense just has to bend and not break, and your offense just has to score one rouge more than BC does, right? So that's all they got to do.
Except they don't have John Ryan, who frequently got traded over to the Edmonton Elks. I think everybody will remember the Hamilton Tiger Cat era of John Ryan.
Put the jersey in the rafters.
Absolutely.
That's so bad. I can't talk about that because Edmonton doesn't play this week. So that is the highway robbery of the year. A guy who's 40, hasn't played a down, and you give an 8th round pick for him. The GM, Hamilton's GM and coach, that's genius. That is the definition of highway robbery. The OPP should be outside his house right now with warrants. That is greatest. That's a great scheme right there. I have to just put that in there.
Chris Jones is going to Chris Jones. What can I say? It don't matter how he does it. He's going to do what he's got to do to build the team. My thing on the Saskatchewan BC game here, I'm going to be watching that offensive line again of the BC Lions. It hasn't given up a whole lot of sacks this season, which is good. However, you have only played a team like the Saskatchewan Roughriders defensive line once, and that was against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and really, it didn't look the greatest there. Nathan Rourke had to move around, try to make something go, because he did have Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat in his face. Now, luckily, you don't have AC Leonard this week, who's going to be running down quarterbacks. You don't have Pete Robertson, who's still on the 6-game injured list after that foot injury against Ottawa. But you still got Charleston Hughes in that lineup. You still got a few other up front in the middle. Anthony Lanier has been doing very well. Darnell Sankey on a stunt could possibly come in and make some moves. So the Roughriders defensive line and defensive front versus the Winnipeg, or the BC Lions offensive line. I think that's what I'm looking forward most to this week. Next game, unless somebody else has anything else that you want to go through, I don't think so. We're going to move on to the Winnipeg Blue Bombers heading out to visit the Calgary Stampeders. This is on a Saturday evening, I believe, as well. So far, I think in this one here, the 7-0 Winnipeg Blue Bombers again, I got to be feeling very good going into this game and very confident, even though they had a little bit of a setback, I would say, against the Edmonton Elks. Let's face it, 7 receptions. If that's not a setback, I don't know what is. You still won the game, which is the Winnipeg way of doing things, but 7 receptions. So, Ryan, what does Zach Collaros need to do to get more than 7 receptions this week?
I thought you were going to say to win the game. My answer was going to be make at least 8 completions, but I don't know how it ended up the way it did last week, man. It's one of those weird, quirky games where, it was 7 completions, but the completions he made them count. The Bombers last week were without Greg Ellingson. I'm not quite sure where his status is at for this week. I think he's missed practice a couple days again. Carlton Agudosi is going to be out for quite a while, went down with a big injury for them. So I think it's going to take, you can lean on Dalton Schoen a little bit, but you got to get Rashid Bailey a little more involved, I think is part of the key here for Zach Collaros, because he got a touchdown early last game, but he still had a very quiet start to the year. And then, insert the answer from the last 8 weeks of get the run game going for the Bombers here, Trey.
Yeah, it was weird. I didn't even realize that stat. Like, I saw it on Twitter and I didn't know what someone was talking about. It didn't feel like he only got 7 completions that whole game. It wasn't a great offensive game, but it wasn't that bad. Like, you would think 7 completions would be a boring game, but it was all right. But yeah, basically, if I had this answer, I would be on the sideline with a clipboard, I guess, right? Like, that would be my spot if I knew the answer to how to make the 7-0 Blue Bombers better. But yeah, you just gotta. I think the run game is the key. I think they got to get the run game going. Seemed like Oliveira was starting to get a little bit going, but it was that against Edmonton. Who knows? And they got to mix it up and get Rashid Bailey involved in the offense. And Dalton Schoen still under 5,000 on fantasy. I can't believe that, but you got to get that guy some fantasy points. Got to get him yards and points. Not worry about fantasy points, but got to get the team going. And I guess the defense, when you got Willie Jefferson and Jeff Coat and Big Hill, I guess your offense can kind of coast a little bit. And you got a guy like Grant in the return game, and Legio is actually putting up some points. So I guess, it's a well-rounded team. The offense doesn't feel like they need to complete 8 passes, right? They only need to complete 7. So it's really hard, I guess. A win's a win, right? Does it really matter the style points?
Yeah, I think you put it really good there. It doesn't matter how you do it. It just matters how many you get in the end for the wins. Let's face it, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have some key injuries again this week. You're right. Greg Ellingson has not practiced all week long. They also have had Johnny Augustine not practicing all week long so far. 2 DNPs beside his name. Another one that's very scary for them is Jackson Jeffcoat has 2 DNPs beside his name, as well as star tackler Mike Miller from the special teams, also possibly out this week. I see he's got 2 DNPs. First time also on that list that I've seen, NIR resting veteran. They gave Stanley Bryan a Veteran Day, and, I guess you get to put that on the chart, which is kind of cool. But one thing that concerns me on the Calgary side of things on the injury chart right now would be Kadeem Carey. He has been out for 2 practices as well. Calgary, of course, does have their trusty backup there as well that has been playing very well, doing lots of good things on returns. But how much does this hurt a guy like Bo Levi Mitchell, who relies a lot, I think, on Kadeem Carey getting that 7 to 8 yards on the carry, so he doesn't have a very long pass to make on the second down and very short. When it gets the second down and very long, is Bo Levi Mitchell going to be okay this week, or are we looking at some problems here for the Calgary Stampeders? Trey?
I'm going to say it's not going to bug him, because anytime I say it'll bug him, he throws and proves me wrong, right? So I'm going to have to say Bo Levi is going to gunsling it probably. He'll find a way, and it'll be close. It's actually a really interesting game. We'll talk about it when we get to the betting segment. It's basically a pick'em, and, it's kind of weird to think that an undefeated team versus, where are they, 4? Well, I guess they're only 4-1. it's a pick'em game on the betting line, right? So it's it'll be a very interesting game. I could see it being either way. It could be a gunslinging show between Caleros and Bo Levi, or it could be a 1-0, whoever gets the only Rouge kind of game, because the defenses are pretty good on both sides too, right? So could really see it be either way, but I'm pretty sure Bo Levi is going to Bo Levi, because anytime I say he doesn't, he does anyway. So, Ryan?
It's going to be interesting because strong start to the year. We were talking him up after the first couple of games of the year. Then he had the one game where he regressed a little bit against Winnipeg, and then now he had the bye week, and now he's playing them again. But the one game where his totals and his yardage and everything were down last time, the majority of that wasn't his fault. His receivers were dropping ball after ball. We're talking 2-3 touchdowns that maybe they should have had on the board. The one at the end of the game that went out in and out of the hands. The one where two receivers collided in the end zone, which should never happen. So, you put those plays and count those. Bo's totals against Winnipeg last time are looking vastly different there, I would say. So, am I concerned about him? I know Kadeem Carey did get the offense going quite a bit last time against Winnipeg, and I would argue he is the lifeblood of that offense. But I think Peyton Logan is a really intriguing option as well. We saw him take over for Carey back against Hamilton. I think it was week number 2 when Kadeem Carey went down due to injury, and he played pretty admirably in that role. Also in the blowout against Edmonton. We've seen what he can do on the returns. So I'm actually not too concerned about the Calgary offense here, as much as I think that Kadeem Carey is the top running back in the CFL and is obviously a huge asset. I'm hyped up on the Calgary offense this week still.
I think the Calgary offense will be fine. I mean, we see a few injuries, though, in the receiving core as well, with Richie Stendani still going to be out for this week, as well as Jalen Filippo will probably be out this week with an injury as well. That being said, though, the Calgary Stampeders still have lots of weapons. And let's face it, when you have number 19, you've got a good enough weapon there to make some plays happen, no matter when it happens. As long as Bo Levi doesn't feel like the pressure is on and starts throwing some blatant footballs. We've seen that in the playoffs over the years, where Bo just throws some weird footballs once in a while, trying to be the hero. As long as he doesn't do that and just manages the game properly, you can play probably a game without Kadeem Carey, and especially, like you said, the backup for Calgary. Again, I have terrible memory of names, and I'm sorry about that. Will be all right as well. This being said, keys to the game in this one, guys. Ryan, you want to go first on this?
Yeah, I'll start with Calgary here. I think the key of the game is going to be put the ball in the hands of your playmakers and have them actually make the plays. Reggie Bagleton was the go-to target last time. He made some plays, but he missed a couple there as well. And Kamar Jordan himself said after that last game against Winnipeg that was just not a good game for him. I think I want to say it was like 7 targets, 1 catch. This is a guy that's torched the Bombers defense for 250 yards in a game a number of years ago, and is kind of the one guy who kind of takes out that defense quite a bit. So yeah, that's my biggest key for Calgary, is a bounce back from a guy like Kamar Jordan this week. For Winnipeg, my big key is going to be the defense just continuing to shut that down and continuing to do what they do, because if the defense plays the way it is, we saw last week, it really doesn't matter a whole ton what that Winnipeg offense does. And do I think they can beat Calgary with that type of offensive effort they had against Edmonton? No, I think it needs to be a little bit better. But for me, we talk so much about offenses, but with the Bombers, we should really be talking about the defense, because it starts and stops there. Trey?
We have to remember, not too long ago, Calgary was a bad deflection pass tip, whatever you want to call it, away from sending that game to overtime, right? So really the key for Calgary is catch the damn ball this week, right? Don't let that one go into the Blue Bombers' hands and give them their 8th win. And for Winnipeg, I think Bo Levi is going to Bo Levi. Anytime I go against the guy, I just have a bad feeling. I might have to actually take Calgary in betting later. I don't know. We'll see how I feel when we get there. But I can't go against Bo Levi. I think he just watches this podcast. I know he listens to Rod Peterson a lot and has him crossed out and always tries to show him up. So maybe I'm number 2 on his list. But yeah, I think Bo Levi, this is the game that he's going to have to show he's old, the old, not old Bo, but like old Bo of old, and then, pick apart the Blue Bomber defense. And for Winnipeg, they're going to have to own the possession. I think you got to keep Bo off the field. And, they had a big drive last week. I think took 9-10 minutes off the clock, which is really hard to do in the CFL in the 20-second play clock. They got to do that a couple times and maybe complete a little bit more than 7 passes and give the ball to Oliveira. And I think that's that. It sounds easier said than done. We're just 3 goofs talking football. We actually really don't. We make it sound so easy, but if it was that easy, like I said, we'd all have headsets and clipboards and we'd be on the sidelines, right? So, yeah, but I think Oliveira needs to get into it, and whoever, is it McRae is their backup now, I guess, with Augustine if he's out. So they got to give them the ball, keep rushing it, give Leggio good field position for the punts and field goals, and keep Bo off the field. And Bo's got to do the opposite. Keep Zach off the field, right? And tire Jefferson and Jeffcoat out.
I like the new tagline for the podcast here. 3 goofs talking football. Join us every Wednesday night.
I know that wasn't the best advertising.
I love it. That's great.
I love it. It's
advertising. But I'm like, if we talk about it, and I love this show. I love goofing with you guys. I love talking about it. But if we really knew what we were talking about, we would have headsets and clipboards, and we would waste the whole coach's salary cap on a team, just the 3 of us, right? Like, we don't need anyone. We got Coach Belichick, Trey, and this, and Madden, Adam, and just that's it. That's all we need. And Ryan, that's all we need. But yeah, instead we have our day jobs, we have our 9 to 5s, because unfortunately this doesn't pay.
The closest I'm going to get ever to the field is if I have a gator to go for costume, and that's about as close as I'll ever get to on the field in Saskatchewan. Let's face it.
When it's family, you can take pictures with Chase and Marshall from the Paw Patrol. That's the last time I was on the field.
Anyways, on that bombshell, my keys to the game in this one here, probably I'm looking at the linebackers on both sides of the football here. Let's face it, we've had a great season so far from Cam Judge over in Calgary. It's a resurgent season from the guy. Let's face it, he didn't do nothing in Toronto. Had a terrible season last year, came to Calgary, and has been lights out like he was in Saskatchewan 2 years ago, before that, 3 years ago, I guess, before that. On the other side of the football, it's Adam Big Hill. He has been a beast for how many years now? You can't run against him. You can't make a motion against him. And he is so quick to get to the backfield if he needs to get back there to get a quarterback. When you got a guy like Bo Levi Mitchell, that's very important to try to get some pressure on him. And I bet you anything we're going to see a lot of linebacker blitzes out of Adam Big Hill, out of that linebacker position. So those are the keys that I'm looking for in this game. Moving on to our last game of the week. It is the Ottawa Redblacks on Sunday Night Football, as Al Michaels make their trip up to do their yearly call in Canada. No, they won't. But they're playing in the Toronto at the Argonauts this week, the Redblacks. I think big thing in this game here, first things first, is what does Ottawa really like? We've always had that, oh well, next week they're going to be better. Next week they're going to be better. Which week is this finally going to be? Is this the week that Ottawa finally turns it around? Trey?
Real quick, I want to say I used to hate the idea of CFL on Sundays, but now I'm actually starting to dig it. After the Bombers and Argos had that Monday nighter, I hated that, and it actually turned out to be okay. And then, unfortunately, it wasn't planned, but having the Sunday night last week and now this one, Sunday night until Labor Day might actually not be a bad idea, CFL. So keep that in mind. But yeah, I don't know what Ottawa's got to do. We talk about this every week, and I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's personnel. I don't know. Like, they don't. I mean, I'm going to keep putting Caleb Evans as my quarterback because he's got me a couple big wins in fantasy the last few weeks. Don't tell Adam. That's my plan later. But, yeah. But, they, again, don't really run the ball, and their defense doesn't, their defense isn't that bad. They have more forced fumbles than Toronto and more sacks per game, but, they still unfortunately can't get a W. They can't buy a W. This isn't a Wheel of Fortune or That's consonancy by, I guess. But yes, Chris, he's going to strike lightning 3 times. We'll talk about it later. Sorry. But yeah, they don't put up much points. They're 129 on the year. They're second best in the East, but that's not really saying much. So they got to get going, and I think the injuries have unfortunately plagued them as well. I don't know if Lapo is a head coach, and there's a lot that can be changed, Ryan.
Well, it's interesting. You talk about Caleb Evans, and we're going to talk about him more, of course, in the fantasy segment. But poor Nick Arbuckle once again goes somewhere and seems he can't get in for the starting role, because we all expect him to take over while Mazzoli was out. But Caleb Evans has played some pretty good football the last 2 weeks. I still think Ottawa is better than the winless season they are at. I think they had a couple close games. Their 0-2 start against the Bombers. It's the defending champs. It's a home-and-home series. They played 2 solid games, a couple mishaps there. They've come close the past couple of weeks as well, despite some issues in there that, have led to another loss after another loss. So I think it is only a matter of time before Ottawa puts it together and does, in fact, pick up a win on the schedule. I think they're in tough with some of the matchup of what they're facing this week. If Andrew, we're going to talk about Toronto here shortly, I'm sure, but if they can't contain Andrew Harris, well, then that's going to be a tough day here for Ottawa. So, I want to see another strong effort again this week from Caleb Evans. I think he's improved a lot from last year. I want to see him continue to improve. And the team to continue to develop more, and the defense has to step up and get it done here as well if Ottawa is going to break the winless streak.
I think on this one also, is what we got to look at is Ottawa's got to play a full 60 minutes football. They have had Caleb Evans go and have flashes. Jalen Ackland's had flashes. Willie Powell, even in the last game, had a few flashes against Montreal. This offense just needs to play a full 60 minutes and sustain at least about 4 or 5 first down drives each drive, and they'll be fine. But until they can do that, and until they can successfully get into this end zone pretty regularly, I mean, let's face it, I know I'm saying the easiest things in the world, get points, you'll win games. Nevertheless, I think that's really Ottawa's problem right now. It's I think more in their head now that they can't win the game. So if they could play a full 60 minutes, I think they'll be fine. The defense has looked okay. It's had some moments. I mean, let's face it, Nathan Rourke had a pretty tough game. Ottawa had a tough game that one. Even last week or the week before, I guess, against Hamilton, just didn't look quite right to the defense. But again, the offense met the match then at that point. So it was mainly down to a field goal in that one. And Lewis Ward, let's face it, when was the last time you seen Lewis Ward miss a field goal? So that's what I'm looking at on this one. On the other side of the football, the Toronto Argonauts, I mean, let's face it, if we don't talk about Andrew Harris, there's not we're doing a disservice to our fans. Andrew Harris, again, had a pretty good game against the Saskatchewan Roughriders last week. No touchdowns, but still had quite a few rushing yards. His helmet probably had a few more rushing yards as well. But nevertheless, does Toronto really just keep handing the rock to Andrew Harris and keep this going? Or do they probably need to start working on getting some of these receivers going and getting on the same page with McLeod Bethel-Thompson? Ryan?
Well, it's a tricky question because of how you have to balance Andrew Harris over the course of the season. I absolutely think this is the key to success for the Argos offense, is to keep giving them the ball as much as they have. Look at, the game against Winnipeg where he ran all over them, got a ton of touches in that one this past week for them as well. He was the big reason in that game that they were successful offensively. But you also, maybe don't want to run them 26 touches a night, so to say, every week throughout the season if you're trying to save them for a run down the stretch. So that's an interesting thing to me to watch how you balance it. And maybe if you get that passing game going a little bit more, that helps. And I think the Argos are still doing a decent mix of it. Like we talk about Harris, but I think there were some bright spots the past few weeks in the passing game. Cam Phillips 2 weeks ago, monster game from him. Curley Gittins Jr. Making up, for lost time of the connection he had with MBT last season. So there are, members of the receiving core that, and we talked about this already a few weeks ago on the podcast, how, we're still waiting for Brandon Banks to wake up a little bit here and there. But I think other guys are stepping up in that offense. So I still want to see a heavy workload for Andrew Harris. I think it makes them successful, but I think they have the tools also, if they can use them effectively, to be successful if he does get a little bit less of a workload. Trey?
Okay, well, two crazy things. I see something that Bethel Thompson's like fourth in Argos passing or something. He's pretty high.
Fifth all time, I think. Yeah,
fifth all time. And the oldest franchise in North America. They brag about that. And then a guy who's played with their 3-4 seasons is fifth all time or something. That's crazy. But he's okay. I think to answer your question, I think you got to keep balancing it, right? You got to give it to Harris. And I think Adam said, how do you work in the receivers? Well, play action. You got a guy like Harris. He's only played 5 games, and he is second in rushing yards right now in the CFL. I did not know that. He's beating Kadeem Carey, James Butler, his ex-teammate Brady Oliveira, who doesn't get the ball enough. The only guy beating him is Jamal Morrow right now. So I think you got to keep giving him the ball. I think he started showing he was Andrew Harris last week. Yes, against the Riders, a team that I'm sure he grew up hating, a team that I'm sure he hated in BC, a team I'm sure he hated in Winnipeg, right? This week he's going to Ottawa. It's kind of I wouldn't say Toronto, Saskatchewan. That would be more Hamilton, but another rival team. So he's got to get fired up and juice it up. Did your screen freeze like that, Adam? I love it. It froze with your displeasement when I said Andrew Harris hates the Riders.
Let's face it, if there's such a thing as giving a lifetime ban to Andrew Harris in Mosaic Stadium, I'm sure he'd probably have it already. I don't know how you could do it, though. He never pulled off a John Cornish, so you can't really give him that. So
that's true.
Anyways.
But yeah, I think it's Andrew Harris has got to keep. And like I said, you really have many arguments for who is the Eastern most outstanding player right now. There's not really a quarterback that's going crazy. There's not really a running back that's going crazy out there. So it's kind of hard to say who would be better than him in MOP or MOC conversation out there, right, Ryan?
Yeah, exactly. It's great. I'm glad you brought that up, that Andrew Harris is second in rushing, because I didn't necessarily see that here, without checking the stats either. So he's having an effective season. He's not missing a beat. He's showing why the Argos still took a chance and brought him in. So if you can keep doing that, that's going to keep leading to the success here for Toronto and, help them take a commanding lead of the East Division, which I think they could do potentially in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think Toronto is on the right track to doing that for sure. And especially, like you guys have all said, Andrew Harris is a big part of that. I think the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are probably looking at that too and saying, yeah, that's not going to be a good thing to play in November or later. So we'll see what happens with that later on as it develops. Probably the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are just fortunate that they've only played the Toronto Argonauts once in the regular season this year. Keys to the game, we'll go through those really quickly because I think I'm already over time. Ryan?
The key for me for Toronto, we've talked so much offense here again, the key for me is contain Caleb Evans. I think if they can shut down his maneuverability, I think it's a very manageable game here for the Argos. I don't think Evans is the strongest passer. I think, his ability to run is what he leverages for his success. So I think that's going to be key for the Argos defense to do here. For Ottawa's side of things, I think I mentioned already, contain Andrew Harris and, get things going, continue to spread around offensively and spread the ball around. You've got some good playmakers there. And you got to get William Powell more involved is the big key that I will keep saying until he has a big breakout game this season. Trey?
I'm going to use my key time to ask you guys a question here because I like hot takes. What's more like, if you had to bet the farm, and I'm not suggesting doing it, but if you had to bet, what's more likely, Bombers undefeated or Ottawa never win a game this year? What would you have to put your money on?
I don't think I can put my money on Ottawa undefeated.
Winless?
Yeah.
Ottawa winless, yeah.
Or Ottawa winless, sorry.
Yeah, definitely don't put it down on Ottawa undefeated.
Yeah.
Bad decisions, yes.
I think I would put it down on Winnipeg myself. I think Ottawa's getting a win in the next couple of weeks here. And I mean, Winnipeg, we've seen a couple of games this season where it seemed like, they probably shouldn't have won. They found a way to do it. So I don't think either is happening. And yeah, I would not put a bet of any kind probably down on these. But a very interesting take. I don't see it. I don't see either of these happening.
I don't see either happening. I don't think we're going to see the, 70-something Miami Dolphins here in Winnipeg, but I also don't think we're going to see whatever Detroit Lions team went 0-16 a couple of years ago in Ottawa. I think one team will lose. Winnipeg will lose. Ottawa will win one. But an interesting thing here, because that's the things we always want to talk about when teams have streaks going, right? When's it going to end, right? So I would think I would lean to Winnipeg too, but I agree, Ottawa, I think they're both not going to happen. But let's move on to our.
Well, quickly, the only other thing now that I'm thinking about as we're talking about it more, right, is if Winnipeg's undefeated going into the final couple of weeks of the season with the record locked up, we saw how awful they played in those games where everybody rested at the end of last season. So that's where that kind of becomes tricky. Whereas, Ottawa going winless, if all of a sudden the rest of the East starts winning games and now Ottawa's in play for next year mode and trying different things out, well, maybe that doesn't translate to success. So, Chris in the YouTube chat is saying Ottawa, he would take Ottawa not winning. Yeah, I see a little more of an argument for that now, but we can move on.
One thing I did want to throw in too real quickly, guys, whenever Ottawa wins that game, they should really go and have a fridge with it unlocked and then go and celebrate with the beer, just like they did in Cleveland that time. When Cleveland won their game finally, they should really do the same thing in Ottawa. So Ottawa beer craft guys, get your beer ready and put it in the freezer or put it in the fridge and have it ready to go so you can unlock it when Ottawa wins that game.
Doesn't Ottawa have a weird tradition about drinking a beer out of your shoe too? Don't you see that on TV where they're going to do that? Nah, I don't know.
Hey, and if we get a team in Atlantic Canada, I mean, there's definitely a lot of cod out there to drink out of. So, anyways, let's move on to fantasy, Ryan.
All right, yes, let's move on to talking a little CFL fantasy here. We've got an interesting week once again in the CFL fantasy leagues. We play head-to-head in the CFL Podcast Fantasy League, and it's CFC Civil War number 2 here this week. As Trey and Adam are going head-to-head. So how much they'll actually divulge on their picks over the next little bit, we will see. But I'm sure we have some good recommendations there, of course. And I've got the guys from the Argos Fancast who put up the top score of the week last week. So it should be an interesting week of CFL Fantasy. Of course, you can follow our results all season at CFL Pod Fantasy on Twitter. But let's take a look at the options available this week in CFL Fantasy. Let's start at the quarterback position. Take a look here. If you're listening to the audio version of the podcast, I recommend checking out the video. We've got charts showing all the prices, all the players. I'm not going to go list them all. In the interest of time here, you can find them, of course, on the website when you set your lineups. But let's talk about the quarterbacks here and which players we like. And guys, I've got my eye on 2 players in particular this week that I generally don't put in my lineup too often. And I got to scroll down on the price list here. And I'm looking McLeod Bethel Thompson or Bo Levi Mitchell as my quarterbacks in fantasy this week. Bethel Thompson has put up around 20 points the past 2-3 games, I believe it is. He's got a 15.6 average on the year at his price. Hit full value, you're looking for a bit over 20 there. And Ottawa is one of the teams that gives up the most to the pass. So Bethel Thompson is kind of, quietly the past few weeks put up some very big games, especially if maybe Harris doesn't get as much of a workload as he did last week. Maybe that translates more to the passing game. I really like MBT against this Ottawa defense, and its price is really low. And kind of shocking that Bo Levi Mitchell is, of the projected starters, assuming everybody's healthy here, the cheapest starting quarterback on the list for this week at $7,895. He's averaged 15.1 this season. You want to get 19.7 out of him. Last game against Winnipeg, a bit of a down game. But as I mentioned before, that was a large part of that was due to receivers not catching the balls they should have. I think they turned that around. They clean it up coming out of the bye week here a little bit. Kadeem Carey may be out. Maybe they lean a bit more on the passing game. I like these two options of McLeod Bethel Thompson and Bo Levi Mitchell this week. How about you guys? Let's start with you, Trey.
First of all, I'm disappointed in you, Commissioner Ryan, that you didn't set up Adams and my matchup over Labor Day or Banjo Bowl. You know, you had complete control over the schedule, man. You could have switched some things around. But but the quarterback here, this is an interesting one. I don't know. I did say earlier I was going to go back to Caleb Evans, but he's cost more money than I thought he was. I do like your talk about Bethel Thompson. We don't know what we have in an Ottawa defense, so I think I'm going to go with MBT, fifth all-time on Argos receiving yards. Adam?
I think I need to start thinking more like Ryan would, and that means doing some real funny things when it comes to quarterbacks. This week, I'm looking at one in particular. Let's face it, last week I tried it. It didn't work worth a hoot. I picked Jake Dolegala. Don't do that. Didn't work very well for me. But I'm looking at somebody just above Jake Dolegala that is on every short yardage play for the Montreal Alouettes. Seems to get a pile of touchdowns every time that they get anywhere near the red zone. They end up seeming to put them in. I'm thinking maybe Dominic Davis. $5,296, 18.6 over the season so far. Well over the 7.6 points that you need them. 13.2 points that you need them to get. I don't know. That's kind of tempting. That being said, probably I'll chicken out on it and go with Bo Levi Mitchell.
Yeah, do you want this to be the week when you're playing Trey? You know, if you do that and it doesn't work out, you're never hearing the end of it. But on the other side of it, if you do take it and it works out, Trey's never hearing the end of that one. And Adam will never let us forget it. That's what's fun about these head-to-head matchups here. I did think Dominic Davis as well. I think the 13.2 you need, that's a little aggressive for, you know, a guy who's just playing short yardage. But now he's in the backup role with Vernon Adams out. So if Trevor Harris goes down or struggles, does Davis play a little more? Maybe he does. Interesting thought there. If you want to go for the cheap play, spend your money elsewhere.
And one other thing to remember, Ryan, bye week and Bo Levi Mitchell. Did I say more?
Yeah, he always plays good coming out of the bye. Let's move on to talk about some running backs here. At running back, it's an interesting week. I like a lot of the top price players here. You know, you mentioned earlier, Adam, that Frankie Hickson is out for Saskatchewan. And, Fajardo is either out or he's there, but still banged up. I feel like you lean a little more on Jamal Morrow, who's put up an average of 18.1 through 7 games this season. He's most expensive at over $9,000, but I kind of like that play if you can fit him in. Andrew Harris, for the first time this year, I'm actually strongly considering putting in the lineup. It's not like seasons past where he's by far the most expensive running back and you need 30 points for a successful day out of Andrew Harris. You need 21.2. He put up 25.8 last week. He's averaged 13.8 on the season. And I think that's clear the Argos have found the recipe the past number of weeks that you got to give him the ball in order for the team to be successful there. Kadeem Carey, if he's in, had a good game against Winnipeg last time, but he is suffering due to illness. Honestly, the other option I'm really strongly considering this week is Peyton Logan. If Carey's not ready to go, or maybe not 100%, maybe he rotates in for a share of the touches here. He's going to be returning kicks. He had a big one that for a touchdown that did unfortunately get called back last time for Calgary. $4,000, I'm willing to risk it potentially on Logan, even as a backup here, depending on what the depth chart looks like, if he is handling returns. That's kind of the guys I'm looking at running back this week, is a few of those upper echelon ones. And then if I need a cheaper play, a Peyton Logan. Let's start with you here, Adam. What are you looking at running back?
Yeah, I'm looking at Peyton Logan for sure. This time I remembered his name. Good receiver, good guy out of the backfield, has done quite a bit also with returns. And I mean, that's worth a few points as well to me, because you got a guy that could play dual side. Another one, if I was really looking for cheap, that you don't even probably have on the list right now, but he did get signed by Saskatchewan, is Shaq Cooper. The guy just got re-picked up by Saskatchewan. He was in for training camp. He'll know the roster, and I guarantee he's going to be starting if Frankie Hickson ain't there on Friday afternoon. I think he also does some returning as well. So there's an option there with Shaq Cooper for the more reasonable ones. But up top, I probably am looking more at a guy like James Butler. Although he is playing Saskatchewan, that might not be a very solid choice. The other option would be Andrew Harris, just because, he's playing Ottawa. Trey?
No, it's funny that you said you have to start thinking like Ryan, because that's what I've been doing the last 2 weeks, and I'm on a little bit of a win streak. So if we both think like Ryan, we're going to end up with a tie, and it's really going to screw with the standings. But yeah, I really like exactly what Ryan said. I have Andrew Harris and Peyton Logan, kind of mixing it up, going with Andrew Harris, who I think has the potential to run all over the Redblacks defense, and a guy like Logan, who, again, not expensive, but could be the main guy depending on health of Carey, right? So that's kind of where I'm going with that. If you don't want to go with Harris, I could see Butler being a pretty decent sub, but again, going against Saskatchewan and lower down, it's really tough lower down, because after what we were talking about, Harris and Jamal Morrow are the league leaders in rushing. After that, if it's not Kadeem Carey, you kind of start getting into that Oliveira, Hickson, people that come in rotation kind of thing. So it's kind of tough to spend money in the running back position. But I think number 33 is a decent gamble this weekend.
Yeah, you mentioned the rest of the field here. Like Ottawa, until William Powell breaks out, I'm not going there. I'm not going any Winnipeg running back, any Hamilton running back right now. Montreal's a time split as well. So there's not a lot of options in the middle of the field. You kind of got to spend your money elsewhere, or spend a top dollar at running back here for the most part. Let's take a look at the wide receivers available on the list, and I'll turn it over to you guys first here on this one of who you're looking at wide receiver. Let's start with you, Trey. Who do you have your eye on for your lineup this week?
Well, at first I was losing my mind because I couldn't find Deron Carter, and then I forgot stupid 9 teams. He's on a bye this week, so thank goodness he should be there next week. I keep forgetting that we have a bye every week, which I should know. We've had 9 teams now for however long, but I'm going to go with Dalton Schoen. He's my number 1 guy. He's still under $5,000. Not league leading in receiving, but I think he's top 5 still. Let me do a quick refresh on this. He's 3rd, and with Ellickson being potentially out, probably out, he definitely will see a lot of action there. So I'm going to go with Schoen. I have Kean Hatcher and Janarian Grant, another guy who might get a little bit of the load with Ellingson being out and could get some returns. Adam, what do you think?
I'm looking at one guy from Saskatchewan, and I'm going to maybe debate this one a little bit, is Keon Schaefer-Baker. I keep taking him every week, and there's a reason, because he's done so much for the Saskatchewan Roughriders this year. He's one of those guys that you don't have to worry about being suspended or being thrown off the field for anything silly. And he just seems to be a consistent receiver for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and overall looks pretty good. Some sleeper picks that I might think about. One would be Tevin Jones. He's looked very good for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, only $2,500 and had 17 points last week. You never know. He might be a very good option to pick up, especially if they all of a sudden decide to sit someone else in that Saskatchewan offense just because of injury or because of other things. Tevin Jones might be an option as well. One other guy that I'm looking at here, Darvin Adams, also for Ottawa. If Caleb Evans can find a receiver, it seems like he sees Darvin Adams pretty well. And the other one was Luther Haredekalu. I'm sorry I pronounced that wrong every time. One day I'll get it right. But nevertheless, $3,200. Had a pretty good week on his first week in. Not so much the second week, but I just have a pretty good game against a Winnipeg secondary that's maybe not quite as strong as it used to be. Right?
Yeah, looking at wide receiver, I can't say who I have. I can't definitively say who I'm putting in my lineup, because I honestly don't decide until like 1 minute before that's not true. I decide, and then I decide differently, and then I decide differently like 85 more times before it's 1 minute before the first game of the week starts, and I overhaul my entire roster from anything I decided earlier in the week. such as I did last week when I spontaneously put all three receiver spots as Winnipeg receivers, and it didn't work out for me. But I think there are some strong plays that I am definitely considering, at kind of all the different price levels. Obviously, if Greg Ellingson's in, I like Greg Ellingson as one of the top priced receivers here. For Ottawa, I really like Jalen Acklin. He's the go-to guy. Put up 18.3 points last week. You need 18.7 out of him at his price around $7,500. But I like what you said about Darvin Adams. He got a ton of targets last week, and he's a little bit cheaper. So if you're looking Ottawa's direction, maybe you go there. There are a lot of these middle-priced guys I really like Stephen Dunbar Jr. has put up, I think he's tied for the league lead in touchdowns, if I'm not mistaken. It seems he puts one up almost every week. He's been averaging 14.6 points per game on the season. That's pretty good production there. If you want to go the Hamilton route and what could be a high-scoring game with Montreal, I think Curly Gittens Jr. is still MBT's number one target. And if you're expecting that passing game to go off and want to stack with Bethel Thompson, I like Gittens Jr. At that price as well. You guys have talked about, Keon Schaefer-Baker, guys like that already. Dalton Schoen, yeah, good price on him, still under $5,000, averaging 14.7 on the season. That's over what you need out of him. So especially no Agadosi this week, potentially no Greg Ellingson again. Should be another episode of the Dalton Schoen show. Keon Hatcher is an interesting one because he's kind of stepped back the past couple of weeks. And so now I'm kind of in that territory with him where I'm like, should I put him back in again and keep trying to see if he reproduces that? Or should I wait? I'm not sure there on Keon Hatcher this week. Brandon Banks is the lowest price I've ever seen him at $46.54. Could be a sneaky value play if you think he's going to make that comeback there. But as you get down to the lower prices, Hakuna Vanu is the one I was looking at for Calgary, potentially. Malik Henry, I think, was one of the guys on the out with illness in practice so far this week, so could be more of a role for him there. Cam Phillips, if you want a cheap stack with McLeod Bethel Thompson, is $27.56, and he's averaged 9.8 points a game this season, had a few big games. So those are kind of a lot of the guys I am taking a look at wide receiver this week as well. And some variation of them will end up in my lineup. Let's take a look at the defenses. I have all the ones playing this week on the list this time. I think last week I forgot Edmonton. They're off the list again this week, but that's because they're on a bye. I have fixed the charts, so Edmonton will show up again next week. But looking at defenses here, Winnipeg's the most, Winnipeg, BC, Saskatchewan, Calgary. These are all the ones over the minimum price here. I'm kind of looking at the cheap play of Toronto here. I like that $3,200 from the Argos. Their defense does some good things. I'm scared about Caleb Evans' maneuverability, but I'm still not sold on him not throwing the interceptions here. So I kind of like that Toronto defense that's been putting up numbers at a cheap play here. Is one of the things I'm considering. And depending what Saskatchewan's lineup looks like, obviously thinking about BC here and the potential for some big defensive plays from them at 4,500. Let's start with you, Adam. What are you looking at defense?
I'm actually going to avoid Saskatchewan this week. I know it's a very weird thing for me to say, but Trey, since I'm not picking Saskatchewan, you're welcome to pick them if you want to. I'm looking at the Montreal Alouettes. The reason being is they love to rush the football and they love to do pass rush. And Dane Evans has a tendency of dropping that football quite often. In that case, I think maybe Hamilton might just get a lot of pressure on him. And if they do, that could mean either a lot of sack and a lot of points, or could mean a few fumble recoveries also for Montreal. I think I'm going to go with Montreal right at the moment. Trey?
Right now, I have Toronto because I think, again, a team that doesn't have a win this year, I'm going to go with the defense playing against them. Again, I think that if Toronto plays right, they're going to give the ball a lot to Harris, and it's not going to give Ottawa a lot of time, so they might have to try to rush some plays and maybe some picks, maybe some fumbles, and we'll see what happens. That's what I might switch around to with any team that's 3,200, though. I do see what you're saying with you said Montreal, right, Adam? I see Montreal. I was between Toronto or Montreal, but I'll probably go Toronto just to make sure we don't have the same points coming in this week.
I keep going back with Toronto. I keep going back to week 10 of last season. Toronto, Ottawa. I think Caleb Evans was the starter there as well. A couple pick sixes. Toronto's defense put up 29 fantasy points. I want to see that replicated here again if I'm going to go the direction of the Argos defense. Of course, these are, we've talked through a lot of the fantasy options here. We didn't go through all of them. If there's a guy you're wondering about, interested about, hit me up on Twitter at CooperTrooper42 before the games this week. I'm happy to discuss if you want insight on any of these options before you set your lineups. That does it for our fantasy talk here. Let's get into, our revamped betting segment here now, powered by Betstamp. We're going to be, as I mentioned, you can follow along on our picks on the Betstamp app. We have we're going to do consensus picks for the Canadian football countdown. So a little change up here going forward. We're still all going to make our own picks here. But then it's best 2 out of 3 out of the 3 of us. That's what we're using as our consensus picks and putting our name, our stamp on it on our show account here. So we'll see who agrees with who as we go through these games here. But over to you, Trey. Take us through what we're going to look at here for bets in week number 8.
Yeah, can you pull up the Betstamp thing or website? There we go. You know what? I haven't had tons of time to look at this, so this is going to be a little off the cuff here, and we'll take a look at what all these websites have for us here. Generically, a lot of places have 2.5 to 3 point game in the favor of Hamilton. I take Montreal to 2.5, I guess, plus 2.5 because do I take the plus 3 just in case, right? Take the plus 3. So with any of the sites there that have plus 3, that means they have to lose by less than 3. So yeah, Montreal plus 3 is my pick there. Adam, what do you like?
Yeah, I like Montreal in this one as well, in all honesty, at the plus 3. Just because I think that Dane Evans has not proven anything quite yet this year. And Montreal is going to want to go and try to pretty much make him take that football out of his hand at any point in time. So to me, I think Montreal right at the moment at the plus. Ryan?
Yeah, I think, you know what, I'm not going to, for our consensus picks, it really doesn't matter, I guess, but for our own individual records, because I think we'll still track those separately here as well, so keep that competition going. I think I got to agree with you guys and go the plus 3 here. I know he's had a bit of a quieter season so far, but I think the lack of Simone Lawrence for Hamilton is going to be a tough sell there on defense for that team, going to impact them a little bit. And Montreal has gotten a little bit better, I think, in recent weeks. So I'll take the Alouettes here as well. In terms of best odds here, I guess, at the plus 3 for the Alouettes, what site are we looking at here having the best odds, Trey?
It's hard to read on my screen, sorry, but like anything below Cool Bet, down there, they all have plus 3, and then it gets back to -2 there. It all depends on what's available in your region. Most of these sites I've never even heard of. So, I stick with kind of Cool Bet or Play Now. So Cool Bet has the plus 2.5, but I take, Points Bet there at plus 3 looks good. I'm actually surprised they have Hamilton favored. I would put Montreal favored, but again, if I was important enough to make the point spread, I wouldn't be on the podcast with you guys. I'd be making 6 figs doing that in Vegas, right? So
yeah, and in terms of the best odds on this game across all the different books, if you're betting against the spread, Betstamp recommends going Montreal plus 2.5 at -101, and we're Hamilton minus 2.5 at -118. Bet 99 for the Montreal pick, Cool Bet for the Hamilton pick there.
Right, let's move on to the next game. A little BC and Saskatchewan. Ooh, interesting. I guess I'd go back down to the points bet again. They have BC 1.5. They only need to win by 2 for you to get that one. I'm sorry, Adam. I got to take BC here in Mosaic. It's really tough to say that, to take the road team in Mosaic, but I think 1.5. They only have to win by a safety or a field goal pretty much, or 2 rouges. So, yeah, I think I'm going to take the points bet there, 1.5. Ryan, what do you like in this one?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with BC here as well. I would even actually go BC at a bigger spread here. Even I think Saskatchewan has a lot of issues right now, a lot of injuries, illness, a lot of off-field issues. They did, to their credit, make it close against Toronto last week, but I kind of like BC here. I'm big on Nathan Rourke. I'm big on what I've seen from the Lions here thus far. And I think, that's a very close line here on this game. I think if you have the potential here, I would be willing to potentially, go the direction of a bigger spread on the Lions.
I'm looking at this one here, and I'm saying that the Roughriders have Duke Williams back, which is a big piece to their team. I think Cody Fajardo is going to play this game because it is a very important game for the Saskatchewan Roughriders at home. Let's face it, they got to go on the road after this and go and play Edmonton and then go and play in BC. Both of those are very tough places to play in. That being said, I think that Saskatchewan, you know what? This is very tough for me because I hate not taking the Saskatchewan Roughriders. But I don't know if it's enough pieces right now. Yeah, I'm going to go right now with the BC Lions at the 1.5. But you know what? When this gets closer to game time, when Trey posts out the picks, don't be surprised if I switch it over to Saskatchewan.
I have to keep my office hours open a little extra for Adam maybe this weekend to get the switch in, right?
Now we're a real conflict of interest.
Now we're locking our picks in on the app here, our consensus picks on the podcast. So Adam, you can change your own pick if you want at the last minute. But we are locking in based on the odds we see them here today.
Yeah, it's 2-1 anyway, even if he switches. So it's all, it's all good.
Yeah. You're overruled here, Adam. This works great. This works great with the three of us. Best odds on this game: BC -1.5 from Coolbet at -110. Saskatchewan +2.5, -115 from Bet99. Over to the next game here.
Yeah, the Saturday night, Winnipeg goes to Calgary. This game's pretty much a pick-em. It's so tight. I would take the Bombers. The Bet99 one, or the Tony Bet, I guess, has better odds, -5 there. Yeah, I think the Bombers should win by 0.5 point if that was possible. It's basically going to come down to whoever wins. And yeah, I think I'm going to give the edge to Winnipeg. So Winnipeg -5 or -0.5. Adam?
I'm looking at this one here. And I mean, pretty much you may as well flip a coin because I think this game is going to be very close, especially now that we hear that the Calgary running back, Kadeem Carey, is not possibly playing. If he doesn't, I'm going to go with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers right now, and by the looks of things, he won't. So, yeah, give me the Blue Bombers right now at -0.5. I mean, you may as well throw it at a 0. I don't know what to do. I think that, what is it there, Fred? I think they probably have called this the best, and straight up pick them.
I love it when it's a straight up game like this because I don't have to worry about that dang spread that screws me over every week. If you look at my official pick'em record versus my record against the spread, it's night and day here. So I'm happy to take that out of the equation here on this game. And if I can pick it straight up, I'm going the Calgary Stampeders here. I think that's the week for the Stampeders. I really do. I think the Bombers win streak comes to an end here because it's Calgary coming off a bye. That game was awfully close between these two teams a couple weeks ago, and that was with a lot of blunders on the Calgary side of things that they've had time to clean up. Remember, while Winnipeg's had to go out and play in between here, all Calgary's been able to do the last 2 weeks is over and over again watch the film of the mistakes they made specifically against Winnipeg here. So they're at home. They're coming off the bye. I know I said earlier, that Winnipeg finds a way to win these types of games, but give me the Stampeders at home here. I like a lot of what I see here.
Actually, I hate to say it, Trey. Changed my bet already. Ryan just said the right magic words. Calgary on a bye week. They don't lose very often on a bye week. So you know what? I'm switching mine. It's a true pick. I'm in this one, and I'm going to go with the Stampeders.
And the best odds listed here on this game, if you're going Winnipeg, negative 0.5 at minus 112 for Bet99. And if you're going Calgary +1, you can get negative 110 for CoolBet as your odds on this one here. Over to the last game here of the week, the Sunday nighter, Trey.
Yeah, Sunday night football. If only we had Al Michaels and Collinsworth in the booth on this one. Interesting game here. Again, this one's the biggest spread of the weekend. I guess I would take Toronto minus 5.5. Or no, there's a point minus 5. I'll take the minus 5. I think Toronto's going to win this one, but I guess I would take the lowest spread just as a safety net. If you want to be a little bit more risky and win potentially more, I guess maybe risk the 0.5 or the 6.5. But I'm going to take minus 5 there from Points Bet on the Argos. Adam?
I'm looking at this right now and thinking that that's a little bit high for the Toronto Argonauts even. I think I'm going to go with the Ottawa Redblacks, and we're not going to have an undefeated team, and we're not going to have a never winning team as well. Winless team is going to come to the end this week. I think Ottawa is going to end up, I take the 6.5 right now for the Ottawa Redblacks. Ryan?
I think I'm going to have to go Ottawa here as well. I'm leaning Toronto on the straight up picks, but I'm going with Ottawa because the Argos seem to find weird ways to end up in a close football game either way, whether it was that week 1 against Montreal, was it? Or week 2, sorry, where it came down to the last second missed field goal. They had another game like that against Winnipeg. It was close until the very end against Saskatchewan last week. Ottawa's improved. Toronto should win this game pretty handily, I think, but I don't think they will. So in the interest of I always screw myself over with the spread, I'm taking the other side of it, and I'm taking Ottawa at the minus 5, or Ottawa at +5, like you had mentioned.
Is that how we're going to do it? Like, I don't mind giving you guys the +6.5, because that is the best odds if you were going that way. Especially if you're going the 2 for that one, and same with the Calgary, giving you guys the +1, because if we're going to do it on the group app, may as well give you guys the best odds, right?
Yeah, sure. Let's go that direction.
We'll give you guys, recap. We all went +3 Montreal. We all went +1.5 BC. I went minus 0.5 with Winnipeg, but you guys get +1 on Calgary. And I went -5 on Toronto, and you guys went +6.5 on Ottawa.
Right on. And that +6.5 pays out negative 116 here from Bet99. And that -5 on Toronto pays out -110 from Betfred and a couple other sites as well. Of course, there's lots of sports books listed, but only certain ones apply in certain areas. I think that's our picks for the week. We'll lock them in shortly after the show. You can check them out there. Very excited to see this, and love seeing all the different odds here available each week. So look forward to that as we go along here. Anything else to add to round out the betting here, Trey?
No, just to recap, Adam and Ryan are tied at 15 and 12 on the season. Not bad. Anything above 500 is good. And I took the lead last week, 16 and 11. So definitely our head-to-head could, because again, we differed on a couple of games with our head-to-head. So we'll see some interesting standings come Sunday night, I'm sure.
And of course, always bet responsibly. Don't bet the house. Don't bet the farm. Don't go to Vegas on anything we said here. Make sure you check depth charts as well, because that can affect a lot of things as we go along here. Well, I think we're pretty much about ready to get into wrapping up the show here. We've gotten through a lot here tonight. It's been a lot of fun talking through everything on the Week 8 preview. Looking forward to the games to come. Looking forward to a lot of great podcast content to come here as well. You don't have to wait till Monday to hear from the Canadian Football Countdown again, because we do have a special bonus episode coming out Friday, audio and video. Tuesday night, I had a great almost 2-hour chat with Brandon Sanders, a college fantasy football analyst with Campus to Canton. We talked all about the differences between the CFL game, the college football game, both the product on the field and the fantasy side of it. We took a look even at some of the major fantasy players at the college level and how that translates to some of the names you're familiar with in the CFL, some you might be familiar with in the near future. So check that out on Friday when it drops on all the podcast platforms. Give Brandon a follow on Twitter as well, at CFF University. I hear he's looking for a new CFL team to root for, so go tweet him up. He's fresh into the CFL. He's looking for a team, so go help him find his team here. As for what else is coming up on week number 8, our recap Monday night, 9 p.m. Winnipeg time, 8 p.m. Saskatchewan. We'll be here, recap the games, update power rankings, give our players of the week. And then same time, same place next Wednesday. We'll do this all again. We'll go through the storylines. We'll talk CFL fantasy, and we will make our picks here as well on the week 9 preview. You can catch all these shows and more live every week over on a plethora of different places. YouTube, search the Canadian Football Countdown there. We're on Facebook and Twitter at CF Countdown Pod, twitch.tv/CF Countdown Pod, and on the Game Time TV YouTube page. All made possible thanks to our presenting sponsor, Game Time TV. Learn more at facebook.com/GameTimeTVMB. If you want to follow us on social media, you can find us on Facebook and Twitter at CF Countdown Pod. Check out all of the other great shows from around the Canadian Football Podcast Network as well at CF Pod Network. And before you guys say goodbye, tell us where we can find everything you're up to these days. Let's start with you, Adam.
Yeah, you can find me at Adam Stewart 1, or you can find me also on YouTube over at Farmer in Sask if you want to watch some good videos. Just posted up a July update video there of all the haying and cutting and raking that you can manage and handle. I'm sure all of you are really excited to watch that. If you are and you like that kind of thing, hey, and come and talk to me over on Twitter at Adam Stewart 1. Talk some CFL, talk some fantasy, talk whatever you want. I'm here for anything. Tell me how great Sunday night footballs have been as well. I think it's a great thing for the CFL. Trey, where can guys find you?
Anyone can find me at Twitter at TreyMBHarness. It's open to guys and gals and anything in between. It doesn't matter. You want to talk Star Wars? Want to talk football? UFC betting, horse racing betting, anything under the sun. I just don't want to hear about the trash Winnipeg Jets anymore. You know, that's it. I'm done with Winnipeg Jets. Right? I'm even though I'm wearing their golf shirt, but it was the only nice shirt I had. And you got to dress up when you go to Assiniboia Downs, right? You got to look nice at the track. So. But I don't want to talk about it. But anything else other than that, at TreyMBHarness. Until they trade Wheeler, I don't want to talk about it. So that's where you can find me.
So you're saying you're done with your team before even the season starts?
No, I'm not done with the team necessarily. I'm done with the fans. I'm done with the whatever. You know, Winnipeg is maybe one of the any Canadian city is the worst with hockey, right? You just can't win, and I don't know. I wish we could make trades like Calgary does. That's all I know. I wish we could make trades like that, get rid of the players that don't want to be here, and we actually get something in return.
All I know is the Stanley Cup's coming with my team's name on it here in the next week or so. So, should look good beside those couple Tampa Bay Lightning ones.
Yeah, I'm hoping you still return that to its rightful owner in the near future. Yeah, of course. You can find me on Twitter at CooperTrooper42. If you want to talk CFL Fantasy again, if there's any picks this week you're intrigued by, I'm always happy to discuss those there as well. And anything else you want to chat about, I'm always open to chat. Whatever podcast platform you're listening on, we appreciate if you do all the fun things such as like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the show with your friends, help us grow the show. We always greatly appreciate that. We greatly appreciate everybody tuning in, whether it's live, whether it's after the fact. And I appreciate you guys so much. I'm having an absolute blast with you all here this season. So much fun talking all things CFL. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.